And so often that, I meet people all the time who everybody freaks out when they're around them, like, oh my goodness, this person or that person. And oh my gosh, you're a former Miss America. And you're like, yep. And I put my pants on the same way as you.
I think we walk into these rooms and people have like expectations when they walk into the room. And at the end of the day, I promise you, they go home and they can't figure out what they want for dinner either. And they end up making a box of Kraft mac and cheese. Like, we're all the same people at the end of the day.
Welcome to Hands-On Heroes podcast. I'm Val Crafton, the voice of grit. I champion the people who power progress and prove that the future is built by those willing to get their hands dirty. Let's dive in. Welcome to Hands-On Heroes. I am here with former Miss America. Very exciting to share with her, and also currently in the nuclear industry. I'm going to let her explain that journey. Thank you so much for joining me today on Hands-On Heroes. I'd like to go ahead and just kick off with letting everybody know who you are and how you got here.
Yeah. Hey, my name's Grace. I am a former Miss America from 2023. It was the year that I held the title. And I currently work as a nuclear fuels engineer for the nation's largest provider of nuclear energy, which is just like a really wild bridge that I don't think most people expect to see. And it's always a really fun story because I've always been told, like, I kind of read like those books that you would fill out as a kid that you just ask for an adjective and a noun and it fills in the story and you don't know what you're giving until you read the story at the end. Sometimes that feels like me. So it's been a ton of fun because being Miss America taught me a lot of like speaking skills, a lot of organizational skills, a lot of public facing skills that carrying into my career as a nuclear fuels engineer. Not only do I have this really awesome technical background as I help design nuclear fuel, but I also get to talk about it to all sorts of people. So it's really awesome. I'm excited.
That's amazing. So when people hear engineer, they often get a picture of one narrow role, right? How has that stereotype shaped your journey, and how have you pushed back against it?
It's actually like a really big part of my journey because a lot of the times in my college undergrad, when I would tell people, hey, I'm majoring in nuclear engineering, first of all, people are already stereotyping nuclear, right? Like everybody would go, oh, so you're going to build bombs. And I was like, oh my God, no, that is such a small portion of this field, right? But then the other half of that, like if you take out the nuclear part, when I would tell people I'm an engineer, a lot of people would be like, oh, so you sit in your room and you code all day or something like that, or you just sit and do calc. And it literally could not be further from the truth in terms of what I do as an engineer or who I am as a human being. And that was actually a really big part of my message when I was going into the Miss America competition was I wanted to represent the women who can was like kind of the branding and the messaging there. Because it's like, you don't have to just be an engineer. Being an engineer doesn't define who you are. No career defines who you are as a human being because you offer so much more to this world than just what you are paid to do from a day-to-day basis. You can love what you do. You can leave like a lasting impact from that, but you also can have a family. I love to water ski. I play violin. I have my mentorship and opportunities through the Miss America program. Like all of that stuff is who makes me who I am, not just being an engineer. Being an engineer is a part of it, but there's a lot more too. So that's just my like soapbox there.
Yeah, no, I absolutely love that, which actually is a great segue into, you are in the public a lot. And I've heard you say, you talk a lot about embracing the whole human, right? And not just the job title. Why is that important to you?
It's important to be authentic. I think it carries into your job, whether you're an engineer or literally any type of job. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Showing up as your whole self is genuinely of the utmost importance to me because, like, I don't think productive or the best products or the best results get made if one person is making all the decisions and everybody's just complying and just being yes men, right?
Yep.
There should be discussion. There should be differences in opinion. There should be the ability to have candid reactions and active just discussions overall around how do we make this the best product. And I think that that's only really achieved by showing up authentically 100% as yourself.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I mean, so often we all walk into this room and we put on this mask and we don't feel safe to show the vulnerable sides of ourselves, right? There's so much more to you than former Miss America or being a nuclear engineer or any of those things that, like you said, there's a lot of hobbies and things that you like on the side. And so often that, I meet people all the time who everybody freaks out when they're around them, like, oh my goodness, this person or that person. And oh my gosh, you're a former Miss America. And you're like, yep. And I put my pants on the same way as you.
I love that you bring that up because like that's literally same vibe as what I was about to say where I think we walk into these rooms and people have like expectations when they walk into the room and we only make those on ourselves, right? Like we're only putting that on ourselves. So if we're nervous going into a meeting with like a VP or some leader or something that like we're hyping up as like, oh my God, I really can't mess up. Like at the end of the day, I promise you, they go home and they can't figure out what they want for dinner either. And they end up making a box of Kraft mac and cheese. Like we're all the same people at the end of the day. So like have a candid discussion, do the best that you can and like be honest and show up as 100% yourself.
Yeah, and I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, even as women, in that very situation where, yeah, we have kids we got to pick up. Yeah, we still have to put dinner on the table. Yeah, we have a lot of things going on. We're trying to find that work-life balance, and as I see men really step into a lot of the roles of being a co-parent or co-partner, I'm seeing those women step out and be a little more vulnerable and a little bit more open to how human they are, at least from my perspective, when I see other women show that vulnerability, that humanness, and I see the men say, hey, sorry, I've got to go pick up the kids from hockey. I can't do this. And they're creating those boundaries. It gives me permission to create those same boundaries, just same for you. When you show up and you're just like, hey, I'm just a human like you. And I don't even know what I'm having for dinner tonight. And I'm not better than you, right? Like
Yeah.
I'm just another
Yeah.
human being who puts their pants on the same way.
Yep.
And I think it says a lot about you as a human being because not only are you embracing your own self, you're showing up authentically, and then you're giving others permission to just be themselves and feel safe and relaxed and not have to put on this aura that's nothing less than who they actually are.
Mhm.
I've always had a belief, and I tell my own kids this all the time, is if, you're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, but there's nothing
Yeah.
wrong with just being kind and being who you are, because at the end of the day, if you want to love on someone, genuine love comes from a place of just accepting you just for who you are, and maybe even holding you a little accountable. And then when you're held accountable, you have to step back and ask yourself, wow, so here's how I can improve as a friend. Here's how I can improve as a partner. Here's how I can improve as a mom. Here's how I can improve for my cross-functional alignment partners within my own industry when I go to work. And I think that's that give and take in any relationship, really. And it starts with, kind of accepting that whole human and being authentic and being willing to be a little vulnerable at the end of the
Yeah.
day. Kind of,
Absolutely. And I that kind of like brings me to I had a friend actually like tell me this and I thought it was just really true and very real where when you're in those moments where you may be hearing something that like you're nervous about or scared about or don't want to be hearing,
Mhm.
which like that's gonna happen to all of us. That's normal, that's fine. The way that she put it is like what doesn't matter is how you first react in your head, but what matters the most is the 10 seconds after that and how you choose to respond. So, like, you have that ability to build this relationship the way that you want it to be, to have it set up in the way that you want to, like, take that feedback and not get angry and, like, breathe on it a little bit, just like take a moment. And
Mhm.
I think that that's something that I try and practice all the time when I have those moments of like, I didn't really like that email or I didn't really like what I just was told. But to just like take that deep breath and like, okay, the 10 seconds, how I choose to respond is what matters here. I can be angry about it in my mind. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong. That's not invalid at all. But choosing how to respond in a way that respects the other person is the important thing.
And I think you could even take it a step further when you respond in a way that maybe it was reactive and you just have had one of those days and you didn't pause before you push send. And I always love the word pause. Take a pause,
Yep.
take a deep breath, walk away from it, come back to it. When you're in the midst of a moment or a conversation or a meeting, sometimes it's really tough to I take it back, I take it back, I take it back. It's tough, right? And so I think that authentic space and showing up and owning your full human self is to say it out loud and say, you know what? I'm going to own this moment. I did not react the way I should, and I want to apologize and I want to own. And what I should have done is X, and that was not fair to you. I should not have put that on you or that energy at all. And I think that just makes you human, even at a whole deeper level. Like, oh wow, you make mistakes and you admit it. Like you own that. And I learned from that, right? And suddenly something happens with that. People trust you. They
Yeah.
trust, they're like, hey, not only that, but I can come to you and you've got this growth mindset and you're willing to hear, hey, that made me feel a certain way. And you're like, oh my goodness, I didn't mean to make you feel that way at all. That was not my goal. And I think you create this very open conversation of communication and trust and transparency and authenticity within it. So I love all of that. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I agree. It always brings me joy.
Now, just let's go back to that engineer. So one of the things that you said was, you've got this, hey, I've filled in the spaces along the way, and a lot of times it's hard to see how I bridge Miss America and engineering. Let's talk about early exposure and what did that early exposure to engineering and construction look like for you growing up?
I was very, very fortunate. My dad was a civil engineer, so I got a lot of exposure to engineering and construction explicitly growing up. So he worked on bridge building in the upper Midwest. So when we had all sorts, like whenever he had projects that were kind of cool or like it was an exciting day at the job site, he would put all three of us kids in the back of the car and we'd go drive and like watch the bridge get demoed overnight. And like,
Oh my
that was
gosh, that's
really
so cool.
cool. Yeah, it was really neat for me though as a kid because like I got to see math and science actually used for a real application in the world around us instead of just like George goes to the grocery store and buys 68 watermelons. Like I like all of that type of stuff where I struggled so much like in class understanding the translation to real life and seeing
Yes.
that firsthand helped me understand that translation, which was really awesome. And I'm again, like I said, I am very fortunate for that exposure because I know not everybody has that. But that was sort of like what initially drew me into math, science, engineering, all of that. But honestly, how I ended up specifically in nuclear is a kind of funny story because I had pretty much narrowed it down to nuclear or aerospace engineering simply because they both sounded really cool. Knew absolutely nothing about them. That's it. Like I knew nothing about them. And I'm back home talking with my dad, and I was like, okay, I'm thinking nuclear or aerospace. What do you think? And he goes, he's got his parent voice on, arms crossed, the whole 9 yards, right? And he goes, well, Grace, like I don't think you should go into nuclear. There's no future there. Well, I'm a 16-year-old teenage girl at this point in time. Valerie, I don't know if you've got kids, but what's a 16-year-old girl's natural reaction when her
I mean,
parents
I know
tell
what
her,
my reaction would have been at 16.
yeah,
Don't tell me what I can't do. Don't you tell me what I can't do.
exactly. So I literally like based on that one conversation, I went and applied for nuclear engineering purely out of spite against my father. So that's how it started. He's now like very pro nuclear and very supportive, and that's kind of how I started out in nuclear engineering. The reason I stayed, I got to learn so much more about the industry, and like I was at a point where I realized how much good the industry does for the world around us without us talking about it or without people publicly accepting it. And then I kind of got into the talking side of it because I'm like, imagine how much more good it could do if we did publicly accept this super awesome technology. But that's a long soapbox. So
Yeah, no, I mean, we're going to dive into your world of nuclear for sure in this show. This episode is powered by Mod 42, the modular data center company redefining speed to market. From design to delivery, Mod 42 brings precision manufacturing, quality assurance, and trusted execution to every build. When reliability can't wait, Mod 42 delivers. Learn more at mod42.com. I want to touch on sort of your confidence. So, how did that early exposure really drive your confidence to even pursue a STEM career overall?
I got very comfortable with, I was always promoted to challenge things and like question things. My mom was really great at that. So I like credit so much of who I am to my parents and how they raised me because I do think that that played a big role in how I got to where I am today. And my mom always raised us with this mentality of like, try something new every day. And like, it's so weird because like, me as a 6 year old, the lesson behind this was just eat your broccoli, Grace. Like it was like literally like just try something new, okay? But now,
Yeah.
like when I sit here in more of like a corporate setting in the office, it's now like, oh, well, if we've been doing this as this process for 20 years, why don't we change it? Like, can it be improved? Why don't we try something new? And it's so interesting how, like, some of those little things have helped me build confidence and comfortability with bringing up some of those, what might be stressful points of discussion in like a workplace and even in like a home environment. If it's like, hey, I want to change where our dresser is, like stuff like that that you don't think about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all sorts of stuff like that, that I think that mentality helped me build a lot of confidence. Um, and ultimately, like one thing that I think is always good to talk about, like especially with public speaking stuff, because I do a lot of that. Um, Most people who have like a hesitancy about public speaking, I'll tell them like the audience is another human being, first of all. So like they're going to be understanding of you. And second of all, people can't tell the difference between fake confidence and real confidence. So, like, the mentality of fake it till you make it is so real when it comes to confidence because nobody knows. Nobody knows. Like, they can't tell. So, just fake it till you make it.
I 100% agree. It was probably about a year and a half ago that I realized I had arrived at a point in my career and I was hiding behind the jobs, still behind the career I was in. And I wasn't really reaching out and putting a spotlight on me at all. And frankly, that sounds terrible. That sounded like the worst day ever. That does not sound like a good time to me. I don't really like to be in the spotlight. The idea of public speaking is really scary. There's so much, what will people think kind of going through your head. And
Yeah.
I had to tell myself, there's not a lot of people like me who have gone through 20 plus years of being in the world of even high tech and data centers and so forth simultaneously, besides the range of construction which goes on beyond those years of my experience. I really need to put myself out there as a role model and a person in this industry. I need to bring that diverse voice to the conversation. And that requires me to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And so
Yeah.
similarly, fake it till you make it in a way of I'm going to have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And I've stood on a job site and I've been that very young project manager having to tell a bunch of seasoned superintendents and trades people what to do. And you get comfortable with being uncomfortable really fast. And I was like, if I can do it in that environment, I can do it on a stage or anywhere else as well, or on a podcast for that matter. And
Uh-huh.
part of for me, if anybody's listening and you're like, yeah, I really struggle with that. I said, what I like is to think about it like this. Whenever I can take a spotlight and I can share that spotlight to uplift other people, suddenly I'm not alone. And that's just, I don't know, suddenly I just feel a little bit more comfortable because, well, you're here with me and I'm not on this stage by myself. And even though it's still really scary because I am going to put this out in the public and everybody's going to see it on all over the social medias and podcasts and they'll have opinions, but hey, this is
That's
podcast
okay.
isn't for everybody. So that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay. You don't got to please everybody.
I
So,
don't
that's
either.
totally fine.
I'm not going to, and I'm
Yep.
not trying to.
Mhm.
Sure. Interesting. I love what you were saying about, your journey and your confidence and that early exposure. I'm curious, when you've spoken with your peers and you're talking about, hey, there's not very many of you in this field. What were some of the common themes that brought them in? Were they all like early exposure? Or why do you think, based on, your own experience, why don't you see more girls entering into these types of fields, into STEM type of careers?
Mhm. Yeah, it's interesting because I think a lot of it, I don't think there are barriers stopping women from getting into STEM anymore. Personally, I think it's
Oh,
just like
I agree.
the choice of like wanting to take on something that is slightly outside of the norm of what's expected. Like I've never once felt I've been told no. I've had professors tell me like you shouldn't be here because you are a woman. Like I have had that word for word. So like those sorts of things still happen, but it doesn't stop me. I strongly believe women are capable of anything and capable of getting around those no's and some of those like obstacles in the path, but they're not necessarily something that's going to stop you from achieving the end goal. And I think a lot of that, a lot of the reasons why we don't see it as much as I would like to is just because there's a societal expectation of to not fight back. And I think this is like coming almost into that discussion of I don't know like an exact source, but I've read this somewhere. So like it might be wrong, it might be right, I don't know. But there's this whole mentality about like when women apply for jobs, they read through the qualifications list and they make sure they fill every single qualification before hitting submit on the application. Versus men tend to say like, oh, I fit a third to none of these qualifications, I'm still gonna apply, right? So it's just this like cultural and societal difference, I think, of wanting to show up and be 100% able to do it and know you're able to 100% do it versus just give it a shot and try. And that's just like a cultural difference between, I honestly think of how like two genders are raised here in the United States. And I hope that that changes. I do think it is changing because I think at the end of the day, we should all just give it a shot and try because we can always go back to the thing we can 100% do, but we're never going to get into that state of discomfort that you talked about to find a new level of comfort if we don't just give it a shot and try.
100%. What's the worst that's going to happen? I always go back to worst case scenario. What could happen?
I'm exactly where I am. That's worst case scenario.
They say no. They don't call me for the interview. Why not? Why not? Because why not you? And I say, you know what? I'll figure it out. I have enough transferable skills. I have enough experience. I have enough dedication, enough grit. I promise you, I will figure it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, you know, I don't want to get into nuclear until we touch on your former Miss America experience, because that's where we started. And people were like, wait a minute, Miss America, you're a former Miss America. I'm very curious on how you ended up there and what did that chapter, you know, teach you?
So entering into the Miss America competition started at the local level. And honestly, I was a freshman in college. I couldn't pay for school. I needed scholarships and it's a scholarship organization. So I ended up competing in it initially for that. And I play violin and I'm a very tall woman. I'm physically like 5'11". So I got a lot of things out of the organization that I was really thankful for. And that's like things like just teaching me posture, teaching me the confidence of walking in a room and owning it, right? And being comfortable in the space that I'm taking up. Having fun opportunities with my violin performance. I got to play like AC/DC's Thunderstruck on my electric violin, like stuff like that like you would never do in a classical context,
no
right?
Way. That's amazing.
So that was like a ton of fun. I got to practice interview skills and got really comfortable with public speaking. Like I found so many of these different takeaways that I valued. So I kept going with it. I ended up becoming Miss Wisconsin in 2022 and then went on to become Miss America 2023. And that whole experience, being Miss America, was really wonderful. I'm very thankful for it. And it has taught me a lot about myself and the boundaries that I want to set actually in a workplace in a lot of ways. And it taught me a lot of like finding comfort in discomfort, what you brought up earlier. And I'm thankful for it, but it's equally exciting to take all the lessons learned and go on to sort of the next chapter of life. Because as fun as it was, like walking red carpets and all of that, I'm like, it's going to be really cool to roll out the red carpet at a restarting nuclear power plant too. Like little things like that. Like, wow, this is something I would have never pictured, but it is awesome. It is awesome. And I'm thankful for it all around.
Part of that next chapter, though, is you're writing a book. Let's talk about the book.
Yeah. Yes, I am writing a book right now, which I never thought I would do, in all honesty. And it's really interesting because I think that this ties into sort of the discussion we were having at the beginning here. So I had this interaction at work where I was still like 4 months into my job, like still very new. And I genuinely don't remember the exact details, but I know we were talking about some existing company process that was just kind of annoying. You know, it's like one of those talks. And there was like 4 or 5 of us around. And I said something along the lines of, I'm like, well, why don't we try and change it? Right. And one of the individuals looked at me and said, Grace, what a disgusting amount of optimism you have. And like, so for a moment, he meant well. He's that's a very normal, like not an out of character thing. It was no ill intention behind the statement. But I sat there and thought to myself, I'm like, why is it such a weird thing to be like optimistic and to challenge some of this stuff that might seem stuck in the ways of whatever it is? And so I decided like, to write a book on that, on optimism.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's coming out in March of 2027 is our current scheduled public date. And it's something that it teaches the skill of applying optimism to yourself, your close family circle, whether that is like immediate family or not a traditional immediate family structure, applying optimism to the workplace, to your industry, and sort of leaving with the question of can one person's optimism impact the world? It's something that's taught me a lot actually through writing the book, but it's something that I think is equally exciting about bringing light to like making it more okay to be hopeful and to want a better future and to be excited about a better future. Because I think as a society, we've kind of started shaming that. And I just don't think that's right.
Well, it's interesting concept because I've had that said to me in different ways. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I'm don't quote me if you're listening, don't quote me, but I'm confident. I'm 99.9999% confident there's a statistic out there that says your mindset, according to how optimistic you believe it can happen, will
Yeah.
determine whether or not it will happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always like looked at that, and whether it was a negotiation on a contract or trying to win an opportunity or drive a change inside a corporate setting. I mean, I've literally had people say, "Oh, good luck. You might as well be a beetle
Yeah.
pushing a ship ball up a sandy hill." I'm like, wow, what a negative thought. You don't even believe at the option. They're like, well, it's just because so many people have tried it. So
Yeah.
you've already given up. Just because nobody's figured it out doesn't mean it's not possible. And
Mm-hmm.
so it just always blows my mind because whatever I put my mind to, I believe it is possible. Whether or not I fail fast and I get back up and I pivot, that doesn't mean I failed. I just have to try a different path and I just keep going. I
Yep.
still accomplish it. It might have taken a few turns and lessons learned and maybe turn around, back step a few steps, but I'm still going to go forward 5 steps after that. And I think the
Yeah.
mindset, the optimistic mindset really does drive that. So I love that you're writing a book about it. I can't think of a better person to, inspire a future generation to believe not only in themselves, but the possibility of what they can do just based on having the right mindset. And I think that I always run across the people with the most optimism are the folks who were told when they were 16, you can't do this, and they went and did it anyway.
Yeah. There's a common pattern there.
Yes, yes,
Oh.
I love that. I love that. Well, I mean, what a great journey you've been on. And so I think it's a great time to segue into this nuclear journey. So let's talk about that bridge, that path from Miss America to nuclear, and let's talk about what you're doing today.
And so it was more of like nuclear and a side quest to Miss America and back to nuclear.
Okay, okay.
So, because I started as like a nuclear engineering major and I was working as a co-op and everything. I had internships and was working in the industry as a college student prior to becoming Miss America. But what was really cool was this bridge of during my year as Miss America, I used this platform to talk about nuclear energy. And throughout that time, I traveled about 270,000 miles to like 8 different countries, over half of the states, like all of these different areas, ranging from kindergartners all the way up to literal presidents of nations, talking about energy and why we should care about it. And then, to the general public, like electricity is something we should care about. It is something we should know about. Your utility bill isn't just a bill at the end of the month you have to pay. You have the ability to change that. So that was sort of like the goal throughout my year as Miss America. And I strongly believe I did accomplish that goal. We've seen public perception increase for nuclear energy, especially here in the United States, substantially over the past 3 years. And I will say that that's not just because of me. Like there is a ton of different external impacts that are going on for that right now. So I want to make that very clear that like, I don't think I single-handedly changed public perception because there's genuinely like hundreds of people with the same goal, if not thousands. And there's a ton of like external factors that feed into
Yeah.
that as well. But so I ended up finishing up my year as Miss America and I completed my degree at the same time. So the transition was like pretty logical where it's like, all right, your girl's sick of paying for school. I'd like to start making money for
That's
once.
right.
And I ended up starting my job with Constellation, the company I work for now. And it's been awesome because they've been really supportive where I had that platform built during my year as Miss America, and I didn't want that to stop. I didn't want to lose that sort of platform or the representation, because I think it is important that not only do we have somebody speaking about nuclear, but we have a young person and a woman speaking about nuclear. And I've been very lucky because the company I work for is very supportive of that. And they are like very open about, yeah, you know, if you want to go speak here, like we're happy to support it, so on and so forth. So not only that then, but on the engineering side of my job, I help design nuclear fuel for restarts and reloads. So like right now I'm actively working on the 3 Mile Island restart in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And like, that's some of the stuff that is just like wild to think about, but
So
it's
cool.
exciting. Yeah.
That is really exciting. Now, although the sentiment is changing, I would have to say that it's still quite, intimidating for the public. Why do you think the fear is still there for nuclear?
I think the fear for nuclear, honestly, is at the fault of the nuclear industry and how they handled so many things in the past. So I primarily come back to this like mentality of the nuclear industry that they used for a while. And they use this mentality of no news is good news, where the nuclear industry stopped sending informed, educated people to go and speak about nuclear and radiation and what this unknown, difficult sort of science and technology is. And it's not even that difficult. It's fancy hot rocks boiling water. That's nuclear energy, right? Like that is it. I wish I could tell you it's more exciting, but that's what it is. And in that capacity, though, the nuclear industry just kind of like stopped giving sources of information for a little bit. Now, what that led to was one, you had a different narrative out there that was starting to become really loud. And on top of that, like I do think the media plays a big role in how we form our opinions in the United States and things like that. So when you grow up watching the Hulk, right, and like the movies for superheroes and everything, something like the Hulk or like Godzilla, where, oh, radiation caused this monstrosity thing or whatever.
Right, right.
But
Yeah.
yeah, so you have stuff like that that raises a generation that does lead to misconceptions and this sort of like stereotype of fear. But then at the same time, you know, you can have the inverse effect, right? I talk a lot with like kids and with people of all different ages because like I'm a big Marvel person. Iron Man, like his little reactor, that's a nuclear technology. Technically, it's not something we have in reality quite yet, but like that's a nuclear technology that is powering his suit. So stuff like that, where you have the role that media plays there. I think that a lot of people right now in today's day and age are not afraid to look into the full story when it comes to learning about some of these more historical scenarios. So accidents that come to mind are usually 3 Mile Island Unit 2, which is important to talk about because I said I'm working on the restart, right? That's Unit 1 that's restarting, that kept operating till 2019. Unit 2 is the unit that had a partial meltdown in 1979. So people usually think of 3 Mile Island Unit 2. They think of Chernobyl and they think of Fukushima,
That's
right?
right.
But those are the three things. But nowadays, what I find, especially with young people, because we grew up with this struggle of not knowing where we're getting our information from and not trusting everything we read on the internet or even in person or whatever it might be. And that's only going to continue with everything going on in the world around us. People are not afraid to do the research and like really dig into it. And now we're ultimately leading and ending up with this impact, this result of people want more nuclear energy because they see that, yes, there are those three incidents, but how did they impact the industry? The industry transformed after all three of those scenarios to have actual lessons learned taken away
That's
from
right.
it and impact. And it has proven to be one of the safest forms of energy generation. I always talk about like my junior year of college, I had the sort of same like panic where I was like, oh my God, how good of healthcare do I really need for this? Right? Like, what am I getting myself into? And I pulled up the OSHA stats for 2023 that year. And there are only 6 industries that were safer to work in than a nuclear power plant, which means, and it was things like data analytics and accounting. And I was like, that's kind of crazy to think about. Like, it's more dangerous to send your 16-year-old kid to go work at the grocery store than it is to go work at a nuclear power plant. And so things like that, where there's a proven track record time and time again, people see that now. It is being communicated. There are people with the right like background and education and real life applied experience out there that are communicating and putting the work in overall. That was a really long tangent there, but like
No,
this is
I
where
mean, it's
I'm like,
really important
listen,
history.
nuclear, I could talk about all day.
I love it. I love it. So, where do you see that fitting into the future of, well, shoot, the energy demand and AI and data centers?
Yes, right now we need all hands on deck when it comes to energy. The wonderful thing about nuclear is it's relatively bipartisan because it's a zero carbon source of energy. It generates no carbon emissions when it's producing energy. But then on top of that, it's incredibly reliable and provides high paying jobs and like millions of dollars in the taxes for the communities that it's in, right?
Mhm.
So it tends to appeal to both sides of the aisle. So my point number one is like nuclear is relatively resilient to changes in
Mhm.
administration, which plays a big role in this AI and data center thing because
Right.
they're looking at these data centers for lasting more than just 2 to 3 years, right? So the energy of where these data centers are coming from, or the locations where these data centers are getting their energy from, that's the better
Right.
way to say it, has to last. And nuclear
Yeah.
can. We're seeing that with plants right now that are getting license extensions out to like 80 years of
Wow.
operation. So the lifespan of a 1,000 megawatt plant could be out to 100 years. We don't know yet. And I think that that's really like not acknowledged enough is that like when you build a nuclear power station, you're not just building something for 5 years or for 10 years or for the next administration to shut down. You are building something that will last in high paying jobs. It'll employ you, your kids, your grandkids, possibly more with great jobs. Fill in the potholes in your community because those are really frustrating because tax dollars from the nuclear power plant will help that and so much more. So there is a really big role to play with reliable, clean energy here, in addition to large amounts when it comes to energy density.
I love that. So, when do you think we'll see nuclear power readily available? I've heard 2029, I've heard 2030. What's your prediction?
Yeah, there's a lot of like question marks. I mean, we already have 20% of America's electricity comes from nuclear. Like that is already happening.
What a
Um,
fun fact. I bet you a lot
yeah,
of people didn't know that.
yeah, we already have a lot. But the biggest thing, like the next sort of like additions you'll see is startups. So I mentioned the 3 Mile Island restart that'll be coming back online as the Crane Clean Energy Center. Palisades in Michigan is restarting, and Dwayne Arnold in Iowa is restarting as well. So that's kind of it that we'll see for restarts, just because any other sites that are decommissioned, meaning they've been like permanently shut down, is what I mean by decommissioning. Most of those are too far into the decommissioning process that it's not worth restarting.
Right, right.
So then the next thing is power uprates. So getting more out of our existing sites as well, because that is very possible. And then
Right.
the next step after that will probably be construction. And now these can all happen adjacent to each other, in parallel
Sure.
to each other, right? We can see power uprates happening while we're restarting plants, while we're starting new builds. And that's something that's really exciting. So, new builds, I think, are a ways out. The US stopped building new nuclear for a long time.
Mhm.
We did just open up 2 new nuclear power plants in Georgia. So, if you're a fan of the Masters Golf Tournament, there's actually 4 nuclear reactors just outside of where the Masters Golf Tournament happens. So, fun fact.
Another fun fact. That's so cool.
All sorts of fun facts. So those were the first 2 new nuclear reactors in the US in about 30 years. So they did a lot of the paving the way for reinvigorating the supply chain and getting the experience and getting all of that sort of restarted here in the US. Now it's about deploying that on a fleet wide scale, which right now that's very possible, right? Because you don't only have public support with about 60% of Americans supporting new nuclear, you also have governmental support across the aisles. And you have the excitement from private industry as well, with the interest from data centers and needing energy and needing
Mhm.
reliable energy. So the
And clean
stars are
energy. Yeah.
aligning. Yeah,
Yes.
the stars are aligning, and I'm excited to see where it'll go.
Oh, you're a part of a great future, no doubt. As we kind of close this all up, I just want to end with a message. What gives you the most hope right now in your industry and beyond?
The people, like, and not just in this industry. I think people in general give me so much hope because yes, the world is changing every single day. We wake up and like, I especially feel like this now, and I'm not like, I'm 23, I'm not even that old, but like when I sit and go into schools and talk with schools and stuff, kids will come up with some new verbiage, right? And I'm like, oh my God, everything's changing and I can't keep up, right? But we're so incredibly resilient and we're so incredibly ready to have change as well. That's what we do. That's how humans have always sort of strived to be at their core. We've always been explorers. We've always wanted to go to do the next big thing. And I know we can do that together. So I'm excited for the future and I'm hopeful for the future because of the people that I know are walking into it.
Wow, what a great end to our segment. Thank you so much, Grace, for taking the time to not only inspire a future generation, but show everyone that even former Miss America can be in STEM and engineering. And it's so cool to see you and what you're going to do. I'm excited to follow your journey. Thanks again for being on Hands-On Heroes.
Thank you so much, Valerie. I appreciate it.
Thank you for watching this episode of Hands-On Heroes. Make sure to like, subscribe, and click on the bell to get notified every Thursday that a new video has been posted. And while we're here, check out another episode. Also, if you're interested in joining the mission, either as a guest speaker or sponsor, visit handsonheroes.net for more information or reach out to us directly at info@handsonheroes.net.